There's an evolution going on this year in music. Well, there's an evolution going on in music every single year, right? New styles emerge, styles blend to create other styles, new instruments appear. But I want to talk about a style that's gelling this year. And I want to even break the timeline. I know. And go a little while, just a year or two into the future. But I am a time ghost, so I can do that. And something very exciting is beginning, and you should all know about it. I'm Indy Neidell. Welcome to War, where we follow the wars that wouldn't end within a Cold World War, the beginning of the digital age, the atomic age, and the space age, when we began to replicate our minds electronically, gained the power to end our very existence as a species, and discovered that we can truly reach for the stars. But on top of that, every now and then, we look at what the youth of today are up to. A recording by Gory Carter called Rock a While is recorded in April 1949 in Houston, Texas. Carter is just 18. The song starts with an electric guitar overdriven through the amplifier to create a rougher, fuzzier tone. And the song has jump blues piano and saxophone, and it's different. It's classified as a race record or an R&B record, rhythm and blues. Race records are phonographic recordings marketed in the U.S. specifically to African Americans the past couple decades in different styles: jazz, blues, gospel, and increasingly R&B. Billboard magazine began publishing the charts of hit songs back in 1940. And in 1942, they began publishing the hit lists for songs popular among African Americans. They called this the Harlem Hit Parade. And over the 1940s, it has slowly replaced race records to a degree, but it itself has replaced this quarter of 1949 with the R&B charts that first appear in June. R&B is taking over from race records as the terminology in general usage, though it will take years to really take over in some parts of the segregated American society. There are also far more derogatory terms used for the music. But I am not here today to talk specifically about R&B, but a new movement of which it is but a part, though a large part. These past few years, guys like Johnny Otis and Fats Domino have been speeding up R&B, giving it a wilder sound and really accentuating the backbeat. What is backbeat, you ask? This is when you focus on the traditionally unaccentuated beats of the bar. In a 4-beat rhythm, this would be on the 2 and the 4, like boom, boom, or like that, instead of bum, boom, bim. You see what I mean? This has been getting really big in African American musical circles, and it's kind of an evolutionary step taken from the jump blues by guys like T-Bone Walker, Big Joe Turner, and Louis Jordan, which itself evolved from boogie-woogie elements of the big bands of the early 1940s. Things happen quickly. This style that's developing that I want to talk about today has other elements, though. It's got elements of gospel, for sure, especially call and response. But there are also sounds that are more traditionally associated with white American music getting involved. Now, country music does not have a backbeat. And whatever else this music has, it has backbeat. And that is pushed right to the forefront. But there's a new country offshoot that does have a pronounced backbeat. It's a sort of rocking hillbilly sound that hasn't really been given a name yet, but is getting quite big in the South. A guy named Hard Rock Gunther, who got the name apparently when a heavy trunk lid fell on him and he didn't even flinch, he's been pioneering that wild sound. Most of the elements of this new sound do, though, come from predominantly African-American musical styles. Thing is, the 14.9 million African-Americans in the U.S. make up just 10.4% of the U.S. population. So for this to really take off, it's going to have to cross over to white audiences, right? There are 2 ways we mainly listened to music in 1949, on phonograph recordings and on the radio. So 2 ways it could really be massively spread. There is a revolution currently going on in phonographic recordings. The past couple of decades, people have listened to shellac records that are played at 78 revolutions per minute, or RPM, right? We all have our collections, right? During World War II, the U.S. Army experimented with records made of vinyl. It doesn't shatter, it's lightweight, it can make thinner pressings for more and easier stacking for automatic record changers. It works great with the new lightweight pickups or with a precision stylus. It's just better physically, but also it allows longer playing since it works well at lower speeds. Playing time is proportional to groove length divided by turntable speed, right? Traditional 12-inch 78s play 3.5 minutes maximum, and 10-inch ones 3 minutes. That's it. That's all you can put on a record. Well, this year, 1949, in February, RCA Victor releases the first 45 RPM 7-inch single, which can hold up to 8 minutes of music, though they are mostly used for singles. And Columbia Records has long been working on the first LP record, long playing, that can hold at least 20 minutes per side. And they released their first 10 and 12-inch LPs in June 1948. There seems like there might be a format war between the two, but both formats will eventually prevail. RCA Victor issuing its first LP in January 1950, and Columbia issuing its first 45 in February 1951. Within a couple years, over 200 million 45s will be sold as the record industry undergoes a massive boom period. The 10-inchers will mostly go the way of the dinosaurs, and 12-inch LPs will play at 33 1/3 RPM. But the point is, it seems that everyone is buying records these days. But who plays the records? Along with the boom in record sales, a new figure soon begins to take a big place in the spotlight: the disc jockey. On July 11th, 1951, on WJW radio in Cleveland, Alan Freed, who's been a star radio announcer at several stations over the past few years, begins broadcasting a midnight show called The Moondog House that is entirely devoted to R&B records and this new sound. R&B music has been played on the radio before, of course, but only on smaller inner-city stations aimed at African Americans. Not a major mass audience station like WJW with a huge reach and a predominantly white audience. What Freed also does is play the tracks as recorded by black artists and not waiting until cover versions by white artists are available, which has been the standard if and when R&B songs are ever played at all. What might you call this kind of music, this development out of R&B with these other influences? Freed refers to it as rock and roll, but he did not come up with that term. It's been around for decades, actually, mainly to refer to either sex, dancing, or good old gospel grooving. Side note here, that last is primarily just rocking, but also to a lesser degree, rocking and rolling. The words rock and roll appear in the 1930s and 40s in a few different places. But from 1942, Billboard magazine record reviewer Maury Orodenker starts at least semi-regularly using the expression. First, when writing about one of Lucky Melinder's records. His big bands, who are an influence on the jump blues to come, were successful in both Europe and the US in the 1930s. This continues in the 1940s with a residency at the Savoy in New York. Well, his band releases their version of the song Rock Me, written by Tommy Dorsey in 1938, and which importantly features Sister Rosetta Tharpe, famous from gospel, on vocals and guitar. And Orodenker reviews it in the May 30th, 1942 issue of Billboard. It's the B-side of the single Savoy. Orodenker writes, "Band takes to the background, and it's Sister Rosetta Tharpe for the rock and roll spiritual singing. Guitar introduces the spiritual, and Miss Tharpe's vocal preachments fill the side." Still, Orodenker refers to it further as a race side, meaning race record. Alan Freed is often credited with popularizing the term rock and roll. In his own words, though, rock and roll is really swing with a modern name. It began on the levees and plantations, took in folk songs, and features blues and rhythm. It's the rhythm that gets to the kids. They're starved of music they can dance to after all these years of crooners. And let's be clear, the hit parade of the late 1940s is dominated by crooners like Bing Crosby. That sort of music and vocal pop in general started taking over from the big bands post-war, although there was Latin, jazz, swing, and country music in the charts. The number one single of 1948 was a ragtime number, 12th Street Rag by Pee Wee Hunt and his orchestra. And number two was the novelty samba number Mañana, performed by Peggy Lee. So the kids, they could really use something new. But beyond the terminology, which has been used more and more often as the 40s roll on, Freed is credited with something that really sets this music apart from what comes before. Fried's role in breaking down racial barriers in American pop culture in the 1950s by leading white and black kids to listen to the same music put the radio personality at the vanguard and made him a really important figure. Fried will gain fame internationally as a DJ, spreading the rock and roll. So, is there a first rock and roll single? Well, I started this episode mentioning Gory Brown, and some call Rock-A-While a candidate for the first. While Bill Moore recorded a song called We're Gonna Rock, We're Gonna Roll in 1947, that might be it too. The song Rocket 88 will be recorded in March 1951, and an awful lot of people will later call that the first rock and roll record. It's credited to Jackie Branson and his Delta Cats, and Branson does do the vocals, but the band is actually Ike Turner and his Kings of Rhythm. It hits number 1 on the R&B charts. What does Ike Turner say about this maybe being the first rock and roll record? I don't think that Rocket 88 is rock and roll. I think that Rocket 88 is R&B, but I think Rocket 88 is the cause of rock and roll existing. Rock and roll existing. I mean, maybe it's just a passing fad. Maybe in 1953, I'll have another new style to talk about. Hank Williams' Move It On Over from 1947 showcases the countryside of all this. There's That's All Right by Arthur Crudup from 1946, which I have a hunch we might hear again in some way in future. Jimmy Preston's Rock This Joint sounds pretty futuristic as well. Hard Rock Gunther's Birmingham Bounce from 1950 could be the first white rock and roll single covered by loads of people. And the drums, they're really cool in that song. The first rock and roll song is a really tough one to say. But what may very well be the first major rock and roll concert happens on March 21st, 1952. The Moondog Coronation Ball at the Cleveland Arena, of which Fried is one of the organizers. The venue holds some 10,000 people, but at least twice that many tickets are reportedly sold. Definitely from counterfeiting, but also from printing errors from what I've read. The crowd that's denied entry breaks through the doors, and the police shut it down after the first song. You see on the poster that it features the Dominoes? Billy Ward in the Dominoes' 1951 hit 60-Minute Man specifically says, I'll rock 'em, roll 'em all night long. So the language is for sure spreading. But that song is important for another development that propels this music along. For that song is an example of a newly emerging subgenre of this sound on North Carolina beaches, where teenagers on vacation, college students, and locals all flock to the bars, which is one of the few places you can publicly hear the new sound in the segregated South, and where you can even find black kids and white kids dancing together. And that is pretty new for the Carolinas. That song and its ilk are still backbeat, but with more of a blues shuffle, like 60-Minute Men has like, and they have their own specific dance there. It's called the shag, which has a very different meaning across the Atlantic. So we've got this Carolina beach music, this R&B, this rock-a hillbilly, this jump music, and it seems like it's sort of all bubbling together under the surface as the 40s come to a close in what might be a perfect storm, as DJs like Fried spread it to mainstream audiences all across the USA, just when the record industry is booming with 45s and 33s, and the 45s are perfect for multi-song jukeboxes, which have been having their own popular revolution throughout the 1940s. I don't know what's going to happen the next couple of years, but this music, this rock and roll, seems so accessible and with such broad appeal across genres that maybe, just maybe, it could become a global sensation. We'll just have to wait and see.
Did you just record an episode about the beginning of rock and roll?
Yes.
Didn't you forget something?
Yes. And don't miss our next exciting episode where we take you to Greece and the Balkans to see what's going on there. And all of this and all of our series are brought to you by the enthusiastic efforts of the TimeGhost Army. You too can join the Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. And don't forget to subscribe either. And Excelsior!